Today, we're going to cut through all the legal jargon around data privacy to get to what really keeps your information safe. It's the difference between just following the rules and actually building a real digital fortress. Let's dive in.
Look, if you're in business today, you've got data, lots of it. Customer data, user data, employee data, you name it. And the thing is, for every little piece of that data, there's a whole tangled web of rules telling you exactly what you can and can't do. It's a high-stakes minefield out there.
And that really leads to the big question we're tackling today. Are you just checking boxes on a compliance sheet to avoid getting fined? Or are you building a genuine culture of security that protects your data from the inside out? The difference is huge, and we're about to see just how huge. So here's our game plan. First, we'll cover the new rules of data. Then we'll put the two biggest regulations, GDPR and CCPA, head-to-head. After that, we'll get into the fundamental principles of security, the CIA triad. From there, we'll talk about going beyond the law with something called due diligence. And finally, we'll wrap up with how to build your own layered defense. Okay, let's start with the rules of the game. The whole world of data privacy has been turned on its head in the last few years, and it's mostly thanks to two giant pieces of legislation. So on one side, you've got Europe's GDPR, which pretty much set the new global gold standard for protecting data. And then over in the US, you have California's CCPA, which brought a lot of those same big ideas stateside. They're both trying to do the same thing, protect our privacy, but man, they go about it in really different ways.
All right, so let's throw them in the ring and see how they really stack up against each other.
Now, the philosophy behind these two is what's really fascinating. GDPR is what they call extraterritorial. Basically, it doesn't matter where your business is. If you handle data from someone in the EU, boom, it applies to you. CCPA is much more focused on California. But the huge difference, the one that really changes everything, is consent. GDPR is all about opt-in. You have to get someone to actively say, yes, you can use my data. With CCPA, it's more of an opt-out model. The default is yes, and it's up to you, the user, to say, hey, stop selling my info. Okay, so they both give users rights. They both demand that companies be transparent. But if you really want to know what keeps CEOs up at night, it's this next part. It's all about the consequences. Under GDPR, if you have a serious mess-up, you could be looking at a fine of up to 20 million euros. Or, and this is the kicker, 4% of your company's entire global revenue from the year before, whichever number is bigger. I mean, for a big company, that's not just a slap on the wrist. That can fundamentally change your business. Now let's flip over to the CCPA. The absolute maximum penalty for an intentional violation, $7,500. Now, sure, people can sue for damages if there's a breach, but from a purely regulatory fine perspective, well, you can see the risk is just in a completely different universe. So, we've looked at the laws. They tell us what to do, but to actually do it right, we have to understand why. And that brings us to the bedrock of information security, the CIA triad. And no, not that CIA. This is the absolute foundation that all good security is built on. All right, first up, C for confidentiality. Super simple concept. It's all about secrecy, making sure that sensitive information stays secret and is only seen by the people who are supposed to see it. It's basically the digital version of a locked vault. Only the right people have the combination. Next up, I for integrity. And this one is all about trust. Can you trust your data? Integrity means guaranteeing that your information is accurate and complete, and that nobody has messed with it without authorization. Because, let's be real, if you can't trust your data, it's worse than useless. It's downright dangerous. And the final piece of the puzzle, A for availability. This might sound obvious, but it's so important. Your data, your systems, they're completely worthless if the authorized people can't get to them when they need to. This is all about protecting against things that could lock you out, like a massive denial of service attack or just a critical system failure. Okay, so following the law, that's step one. Understanding the CIA principles, that's step two. But to really make it all work in the real world, you need something more. You need a commitment that goes way beyond just the text on the page. You need what's called due diligence. And this quote just nails it perfectly. You can't just sit back and hope for the best. Security is an active sport. Just sitting there and doing nothing is not a defense. And that's the absolute key here. Due diligence isn't a one-and-done project you can check off a list. It is a constant process. It's the day-in, day-out work of monitoring, maintaining, and improving your defenses to make sure they're actually working. So what does that actually look like? Well, it means you're really careful about the security vendors and software you choose. It means you're keeping meticulous records and logs. You're demanding proof that things are secure, asking for certifications or audit reports. And maybe most importantly, you're constantly reviewing everything and you're ready to adapt when new threats pop up.
All right, let's bring it all home. We've talked laws, we've talked principles. Now let's talk strategy. Because a truly secure company knows you can't just rely on one single thing to protect you. You don't build a single wall, you build layers.
This strategy is called defense in depth, and the best way to think about it is like an onion. Right at the very center, the core, that's your precious data. Then you start adding layers around it. You've got application security, then host security, then network security like firewalls. Each one is another barrier an attacker has to get through. And look at that outer layer. People. Never forget that. Your employees, their training, their awareness, they are one of the most critical layers of your entire defense. And that really brings us right back to where we started. If you do this right, if you build that layered, onion-like defense, if you live by the principles of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and you practice constant due diligence, then something amazing happens. Compliance with laws like GDPR isn't this stressful thing you're chasing. It just becomes the natural result of having great security. So I'll leave you with this to think about when you look at your own company. Is your data protection just a quick coat of compliance paint, something you slapped on to look good for the auditors, or is it actually built into the very foundation of how you operate? Because the answer to that question changes everything.